So from our ICIS homepage, which we've recently updated, you can get to the web map via the web map icon. So now here we have 4 icons. This is the map viewer, which is the new ICIS public map viewer, the member data catalog, status maps, which summarizes the status of the GeoShare process of which jurisdictions have signed on. And then this last member data portal is our legacy data portal in which some jurisdictions or some organizations within ICIS are still delivering data that aren't on GeoShare. It is also a place to pick up some associate member data, more ad hoc data like survey data and some of our other associate members. But we are in the process, like our old web map, of sunsetting this data portal. So through that process, we'll come up with a new area for those jurisdictions or those organizations not on GeoShare to deliver their data. Because what we would like to do is have the member data catalog as the one place to access data as well as deliver data. So as you click on the map viewer here, again, there is the description of the 3 cadasters, and here's just a chance to sign up for webinars. But if you click accept here, you'll notice quite a few changes from the old web map. And one of the reasons why we're moving from the old GeoCortex ArcIMS web map to the new Silverlight is that it was legacy technology and it was no longer being supported. So the initiative by the ICIS board was to first come up with a public web map and then go back to the table to do a member web map. So again, the look and feel is quite different. And some of the new functionality that wasn't available in our existing public or member web map was the ability to choose your base map. So here, depending on what you'd like to see, you can go in and change it to some imagery, or you have the choice between Bing Maps or OpenStreetMaps. So far we've got good feedback on, in terms of context and background, people like this a lot better than our previous web map. So if you click here, the next menu is the Map Contents menu. And you can see that for the most part, it's the same layers that were available in the public web map. So you have the ICIS cadastre, outline and fill. You have the assessment folios, the address BC points. Under the cadastral data, not the ICIS cadastre, is the ICF as well as the old as-is cadastre. And like it says in the blurb on the web map, the ICIS cadastre, or the as-is cadastre, is the ad hoc cadastre of those jurisdictions that aren't on GeoShare. But for the most part, most of the province, or the majority of the province, is on the ICIS cadastre. So there's only a couple jurisdictions within this local government cadastre. As well, there is some of our associate member or agency data, which is included in this web map. Some jurisdictional boundaries, as well as some labels that wasn't featured before in the public or the member web map. Now it's important to note that there's a difference between the ICIS cadastre and the BC Assessment Fabric and all the other layers. The ICIS cadastre and the Assessment Fabric are feature access layers, and meaning that you actually have access to attribute tables. And this was a decision made by the board to have those 2 feature classes as feature access instead of just web mapping services. Some of the functionality of the feature access layers is altering the look and feel of the feature access layer while you're in the mapping session. So if you right-click on the feature class and configure layer, you have the option to alter the transparency. You could play around with the symbology. But keep in mind, again, this is only for the active session. You do have the option to show what field you want for the pop-up menu. So for example, say for the pop-up, I only wanted to show PID, PIN, and juror role and the attribute source and geometry source. So when I ID'd on the parcel, those are the only fields that show up in the pop-up menu. You also have the same functionality for the attribute table. So you can either have all the attributes on or just a few of the attributes. Another function of the feature access layers is you can filter on a certain jurisdiction or on a certain attribute. But instead of a query, this will only display those attributes in the filter. So if I just did local area equals Oak Bay, only Oak Bay would show up in the map, not any of the surrounding jurisdictions. Some of the tools available in the public web map, which we've added, are a civic address search. So you can go in and query on a certain address. And it'll zoom to that address. And one thing to note is this is the first time we've had addresses and parcels in Assessment Fabric within the same viewer, because in our existing web map, both public and member, we never had addresses. For a short time, we did have the Address BC application, but due to limited functionality, it only lasted a short time. So we only had parcels and the Assessment Fabric, but not the addresses in the same place. You could access that data, but you couldn't view it in the same application. So if I click on this address for the pop-up, there is also available, it actually also drills down, so you get the address, you get the parcel, as well as the regional district. But for the Address BC information, since there are relational tables, you do have the ability to look at the relational table for subaddress, and it'll show it in the table below. So this is the one-to-many relationships where there's a parent address and associated units in this case. You also have the option to remove this search. Another navigational tool we have is the search by jurisdiction. So if you wanted to quickly go to, say, Cache Creek, you can zoom to Cache Creek, and there you go. And one other tool that we just put in, this wasn't included when we first released the web map last week, was the PID search. But based on the feedback we got in the first couple days of the release of the web map, we realized that the PID search was a very important tool, and many organizations, and as well as non-members, use this PID search. So again, you can click on the search tool, copy in a PID, and zoom to that layer, or zoom to that feature class. Another function or features that are available in this web map compared to the last one are labels. So let me just, actually I think I'm not sure if it's frozen or not. I'm just going to change the base map here and zoom in. So you do have the option to put on address labels as well as ICF labels, which I think is the PID, and the assessment labels, which are, of course, the folios. So in terms of navigation and a quick, if you want to go into an area and get a quick look just to identify a PID, an address, a PIN, a folio, it's convenient for that. You also do have the option to query the base maps. So, and that's dependent on what base map you're using from this button here. You have the normal select tools. So if you highlight on a layer, for instance, the cadastre outline, and you go in and select some parcels, you have the ability to view them in the table. So the 7 out of 100 out of 1,000 records. And then you can isolate just those selected records. And say if I pan out, I can zoom back to those selected records. What we're finding is a lot of the members of the public web map just want to quickly go in, search by PID, and just or go to an area and just do a quick identify and get a roll number. So this is convenient for that kind of type of functionality. And because it's because it's a public web map, there's no download capabilities. That we consciously decided to separate the web map viewer with the data access, and which I'll summarize after the web map. There are some measurement tools within the public web map. Again, this is just an out-of-the-box, sort of our first kick at the can for the public viewer. So we have been getting feedback of some of the functionality, like searching by lat and long or UTM, which is not in there. But we're asking for all member feedback to come back to ICIS. So for future builds, we'll look at sort of what feedback we get, and then in future releases, we'll try to add that functionality. But one of the functionalities of the measure tool is you can click on a point and get the lat long. And then again, here I won't go through them all, but it has all the measurement, either line, area, polygon, are available to do a quick assessment of an area. It does have print capabilities, but we realize I think it's 8.5 by 11 or 11 by 17 for out of the public viewer. We know it's limited, but as a quick little one-off map, it's possible to do. Are there any questions about the web map?
Just one quick question about the latitude and longitude. Does it just come in a decimal form when you do that function, or can you get degrees, minutes, seconds, or do you have to turn it? Yeah, no,
this is just the default.
Okay.
Again, we're looking for feedback of what people would like to see, and we'd like to add UTM or different formats of the measurements, but that'll be in future functionality.
Okay. Yeah, certainly the degrees, minutes, seconds would be useful.
Yeah, and we realize that a lot of our ICIS members do have their own municipal or regional district web maps, so we're gonna look back and sort of for that collaboration to provide code or to provide scripting for the various amount of tools.
I have a question, Steve. This is Tom from BC Assessment.
Yeah.
I'm just curious because you happen to have the BC Assessment labels on. Are those labeled by the assessment fabric parcel or labeled by the legal parcel?
No, they'd be coming directly from the assessment fabric.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, everything here you see, like this is civic address, everything's from sort of its parent feature class. So if there are no more questions about the web map viewer, we'll move on to the ICIS data catalog. So we've had a lot of feedback based on the credentials for access to the data catalog. We've sent out a lot of username and passwords for the FTP access, but you also still need your existing ICIS username and password to access the data catalog. So, and one important thing to note is it's important if you're in Internet Explorer that you need that domain first before your username. So here I go, I'll log on as myself. To the member site. Again, here's a summary of the different cadasters. And so for regular members that have access to all the feature classes within ICIS, you would click on the regular member access. And here is our sort of initial, again, stab at a data catalog. So what we've done is we've taken feedback from our old web map and the different type of files of downloads and based our first catalog on the file format of ArcGIS 10.2.1 file geodatabase. And we know this won't accommodate everyone, but again, we're looking for feedback for different file types or versions that you'd like to see in the data catalog. So don't hesitate to send me an email or call me and say, you know, before we were using CAD or shapefiles, this is no longer available. We definitely want to hear your feedback. In terms of geography, what we've done is we provided the full cut for all these feature classes, and then we've also divided it down by regional district. And then you'll see some jurisdictions don't have, for example, addresses in that regional district. It's just because it's not available. So as we get more data coming in from each jurisdiction, the data catalog will fill up with the different feature classes. So the FTP credentials or data access credentials that were sent out are used here when you actually go and click on a folder. So for example, if I wanted the full cut of Kinder Morgan data, this is when I'm prompted for my FTP credentials. So here, once I do that, I will be able to download and save the data. But once you enter those credentials, you won't be asked again within this session. So you can go through the catalog and download that data. I know there are some organizations that are having problems accessing the data catalog, so we are suggesting that they also try to access it directly through FileZilla. And I have sent out that those host and port credentials, and then just using your FTP credentials to access the data. Because some people may want to just not go through the data catalog, open it up in an FTP client like FileZilla. So here is an example here, and they have the exact same file structure here, but just in FileZilla, so they can, they may have it bookmarked and they can go directly there.